Do you ever feel like you're doing the work, you're turning up, you're delivering good stuff, but for some reason you're kind of just being overlooked? Well, if that's you, or you feel like you've been in that position for you, I feel your pain. I've been there as well, mea culpa. But the good news is that we can change. We can shift from being overlooked to being sought out. And in today's episode, I'm going to share how I went from being kind of politely ignored to becoming the go-to person at work. And no, I didn't take a brand new public speaking course or create a new man bun or something like that to look more creative. What changed was my mindset and the questions that I ask. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Well, welcome to this episode. So I want to paint a picture for you to start off with. And sometimes people have the perception I'm the most outspoken, lively, creative, thinking person in the world, and I always have been. No, believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And actually, as an introvert, when I used to work within teams, within an organization, I was kind of like the classic wait until I'm asked kind of guy. I wouldn't speak up unless I was invited, and I wouldn't pitch any ideas unless I was actually asked to do it, or that was my specific role. And for some reason, I had a limiting belief, and that was that I was being smart by not rocking the boat. But in fact, all I was really doing was blending into it. And blending in is kind of a fast track to becoming invisible. And here's the truth. Playing it safe at work can actually be riskier than speaking up. And the first thing that I really realized I needed to change was my mindset. And when I think of mindset, and a phrase that just is burned into my mind is to go from seeking permission to seeking forgiveness. That's probably even better if I said, rather than asking for permission, to seek forgiveness. And when I stopped, waiting for permission to start solving problems, and I just started to ask better questions, or just starting to try and solve problems myself, that's when I started to get better results. And one of the ways that I would do that was just ask the question myself, and then sometimes other people. What's one thing I could do to improve what's going on here? And I would ask that to myself, even if no one else was around. I would write it down and say, what's one thing I could do to improve what's not working on around here? And I remember the first time I started doing this, and I was a bit scared of doing it, but I was working at a design firm, and it was, we had only about 12 people. It was a fairly small organization. In the office that I was in, there was, satellite teams, design teams around the country. And I found one thing really annoying is that when people would answer the phone, it was like, consultants. Like, that was it. There was like, hang on, you're in a service industry. You're providing design as a service for your customers. And you could tell that people on the other end of the call were never that happy. So I thought, well, what's one thing I could do to improve it? I thought, well, why not have a better script in answering the phone? And so I started to say, "G'day, Nils Vesk, XYZ Consultants, how can I help you?" Or "XY Consultants, Nils Vesk speaking here, how can I help you?" And you could almost, the first time I started to do that, you could sort of see these other heads pop up from their design desks and look at me. But I could also hear the surprise on the phone from the other people, because it's like, oh, hi Nils, this is so-and-so and so-and-so. Maybe you can help me on this little problem, or something like that. So I became not only a more helpful person. Not only did I start to help the business because I was being more of a customer relations, had a customer relations mindset from the beginning, but I was becoming more known as, well, I know who this person is, maybe they can help me out. So I was becoming more sought out from not only within the organization, but from the clients who started to recognize who I am. And I know that is a very, very simple example of one little thing. So the question you've got to ask yourself is, what's one problem or one area that I could help to improve around here? And just start to make some steps to make that happen, and you'll start to get noticed. All right, second thing I found really useful was to go from asking the obvious type of questions to asking the original type of questions. So an obvious question might be, what are they looking for? A more original question might be, what would be one thing they would not want at all to ever happen? So flipping it from an opposite. In one of my other podcast episodes, I talk about the power of asking the opposite. So a question might be, what if we were to do the opposite to what everyone else is doing? What would that look like? And what would be the benefit? And when we ask questions like this that make people pause and take time to think about an idea, is people listen and they process what's going on. So that's the beauty of asking an original question. And so what I found, that even if I didn't know the answer, the fact that I was prompting or asking that question made or helped people realize I was thinking on a different level, looking for a superior result and thinking differently. And that was another thing that started to get people listening to me and becoming more sought out. Number three, third thing that comes to my mind is, rather than going with any old idea or an idea, as I was talking about doing the opposite, is I would start to look at value of an idea. And what I realized for quite a while is I always thought it was just about doing something creative or nice. But the reality is, as a decision maker, whether you're a CEO or whether you're a CFO or some C-suite executive or some manager leader who needs to make a decision, they've got a certain amount of accountability that's going to relate to, more often not, an organizational KPI or key performance indicator, some type of goal. And one of the things I realized that I wasn't doing in the past was thinking of what's the return of investment going to be for the organization. And I started to come across three things that they wanted to know about. And that was like, how does this fit in tactically to what our organization or what the organization's objectives are for the next 12 months or 6 months or 90 days tactically? The next one would be around, often about the return investment, so financial gain. So what is the potential financial gain or cost saving versus the potential risk around something? And then the third one I started to develop was around the technical implication. So how technically difficult or easy would it be to implement this idea or this initiative? And so, because if you put yourself in the shoe again of a decision, or the mind of a decision maker, getting in their shoes would be a bit creepy. But if you put yourself in their minds, they're going, okay, does this align with where we're supposed to be going for the next 12 months? Because if it isn't, we're not doing it, yeah? Second one is there going to be some money or a cost saving as a response to all of this extra effort or different type of thinking? And then third, how hard is it going to be? Can we do it? Do we outsource it, or is it going to be, cheap to outsource and a sort like that? And as I progressed in my career, I ended up creating a one-page template that actually helped me to be able to justify that. After a while, it became inherent in my mind. I could just start to articulate that and say, so here's the payoff. I could use different words. Didn't always have to say ROI or, here's the payoff. It's going to be this. Here's why this matters tactically, or here's why this matters to the strategy of the organization. And what it did was it helped me to speak the language of results, not just cool ideas. Because at the end of the day, if the idea is not going to get us some sort of return in some way, shape or form, it doesn't necessarily have to be financial or monetary. It could be in terms of readership or in terms of customers, you name it. That's when things started to change. Okay, something else that's pretty cool, and I call this the unexpected secret weapon. And this is a little bit different, and this is just around throwing in some giggles, creating a little bit of humor. And there is a lot of research around this. One of my previous episodes, I talked about the power of humor, that when you use humor in the workplace, your likability goes up, the perception of confidence, your abilities goes up. You've got a higher chance, 28% higher chance of being promoted, being recruited, headhunted, you name it. There's a lot of things there. So when I found I started to throw in just a little bit of humor, whether I was brainstorming, whether I was doing a presentation, even in my emails, people started to lean in, and they started to remember me. People wanted me on their team, and then when I became a team leader, people wanted to be a part of my team, because let's face it, at the end of the day, work can be stressful sometimes, and humor helps to reduce that stress. Even though it might only be 10 or 15, 20%, it goes, hey, we're not going to die, the end of the world's not here, we can still have some fun. If we have some fun with this, we're going to get it done, and we're going to enjoy ourselves at the same time. So and how might that be relevant to you? Well, it's not that you have to become a comedian, but how could you add a little bit of humor to the day-to-day activities that you do at work? All right, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is the power of having a good system or a framework in place. And sometimes I say to my clients that smart systems beat loud voices. And what I found is that by using the right framework or a process, and by that I'll explain that a little bit more, I found I could outthink people who are much smarter than me. And I could outthink them because the thinking was being done using a model or a framework. And one of those is a framework that we use, and it's called if this, then that planning. I've probably mentioned this before. Psychologists call this if this, then that planning. And I guess you could say it's a fancy pants or a clever way of saying contingency planning. And that's it. So the reality is every project, every initiative, there is always going to be something that goes a little bit off track. And if we have something up our sleeves, if this happens, then we will do that. You will maintain momentum. If you've got a delay, you can move on because you've always got that. So that was one example of a little framework that I would have that enabled me to create good momentum and good results. The other thing I would often do, sometimes I would draw an impact map. I'll talk to you about that another day. If you can imagine like a mind map where if this happens, here's all of the chain effects that are going to happen out, almost like branching trees with other little impacts that will affect different areas there. Using models and frameworks and processes like that helps to reduce your cognitive load, and you will always look organized. You will be organized, and it's almost like no problem too big or too difficult for you because you are prepared. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. I reckon at the end of the day, what I learned from all of those things in my journey and progress is you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to become the most valuable, but you do need to be intentional about how you turn up, how you think, how you ask questions, and what actions that you take. And the biggest shift to go from being overlooked to indispensable, I think, starts with choosing to think differently, choosing to ask better questions, and knowing that you can add value, and start to take the initiative to look for problems that you can solve and seek forgiveness. And I don't still yet to come across someone who got annoyed. One of my clients, a mentoring client of mine, their boss saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that. If anything, they go, oh my God, how have we not seen that before? Thank you so much for making a start on this or getting this initiative going, and you will get recognized. And I reckon the reality is that we work way too hard to not get the recognition, the reward, and the results that we truly deserve. So I hope this has been useful to you. If you want to find out more how you can work with me, you can check out ideamaverick.com. We have a great program there, or send me an email at nils@nilsvesk.com, and we can talk about mentoring that I do with our amazing clients just like you. Thanks for tuning in. If you like it, please give us a comment. Tell us what you want to hear next, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.